Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Franchise Player, and today we have something a little different. I actually went, a little more old school than usual and picked up my first ever Nintendo 64. Nintendo 64 is a system that I've actually never played physically. I've played a Nintendo 64 on an emulator before, in like 2017, 2018, I was emulating some N64 games just to kind of see, some of the main games that I missed out on and just get a feel for Nintendo's first console in the 3D era. Let's get into the story of how I actually picked up this console and what it actually came with, the price I paid for it, all that good stuff. So about 2 weeks back, I was at a GameStop, just looking around. I was on the way back from a trip and I was in kind of a small town and decided to hit up a GameStop. Went in there. The GameStop actually had some decent stuff. I didn't pick anything up though. And when I was leaving, walking out of the store, I saw two ladies walking up, and one had like an old fat PS3 and the other one had a box. And I was like, hey, do you have any old games or like Nintendo stuff? Because it looked like they were obviously going into trade stuff in. And the one lady with the box was like, hey, I have this Nintendo 64 right here. And I was like, oh, cool, like what do you have with it? And it was the console right here. Kobe's NBA Courtside, the first NBA Courtside, which I've never played. I remember always seeing the GameCube one and it looked sick. But yeah, Kobe's NBA Courtside, Nintendo 64 console, and 2 games. And I was like, you know what? It looked in pretty good condition. And I was like, hey, what are you looking to get for it? Because obviously they're going into GameStop, and GameStop's probably going to take them to the cleaners on trade-in credit or cash, unfortunately. And she's like, hey, I'm looking to get $100 for it. And I was like, man, I'm thinking mentally, right? I'm like, man, not really in the market for a Nintendo 64. Don't really have any nostalgia for them whatsoever. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I can't do 100, but I was like, I could do 60. I could Venmo you right now if you're cool with $60. And her and the other lady, they were both hella cool. They're like, yeah, 60, let's do it, no problem. Scanned her little Venmo code and, Venmoed her $60. Handed me the console and she's like, hey, it all works. And I was like, if you don't mind me asking, why are you selling it? And why are you selling the PS3? And she's like, well, we're just getting older. We don't really have time to play these games anymore, these systems. I was basically like, yeah, I feel you. Older you get, busier you get, work, life, everything, less and less time to play games. And it turns out she had actually got this Nintendo 64 from a, semi-local game store. So I was like, okay, I've heard of them. Should be in pretty good shape and it should definitely work. And the console looked, super clean, so I didn't have any worries. But yeah, $60, kind of interesting to snipe that from GameStop. The sellers made out okay. They got more than they were going to get for, either cash or credit at GameStop. And I was like, for $60, the console, 2 controllers, and 1 game, not a rare game or high dollar game by any means. But I was like, hey, $60, both sides kind of win right now. So I'm definitely looking forward to exploring the Nintendo 64 library and starting to collect for it. But before I share, the games that I bought, because I actually already bought a couple games and some accessories, I want to share, pretty much the only memory I actually have with a Nintendo 64. So the Nintendo 64 came out before I was around, before I was alive. So definitely a console that was not in my household. Like, we had a PS1 when I was growing up. My dad had a PS1, and that's like the first console I ever remember playing. But I remember my uncle had a Nintendo 64, and he lived, kind of far away. But I remember going over there once when I was probably, I don't know, I must have been like 3 or 4 years old. And I remember he had his Nintendo 64 set up, and my cousin was playing what I think was Donkey Kong 64 looking back. I remember seeing DK, so I was like, must have been Donkey Kong 64. And I didn't play it, I was super young, but that's legit like my only memory with a Nintendo 64. So I don't have any nostalgia for this console. So kind of interesting to jump into an older system where it's like, hey, you don't really have any memories with it, but you're interested in exploring the library, which there's definitely a handful of games I want to get for this console, and I already ordered a couple too, and I'll show those off, and I'll talk about what games I'm wanting to get for the system as well. So first, let's go over some games that I'm actually looking forward to getting and playing on a Nintendo 64. First would be Resident Evil 2 on the Nintendo 64. The fact that Resident Evil 2 even was able to run and get compressed enough to run on an N64 is insanely impressive. I know Modern Vintage Gamer, he has a pretty dope channel. He did a video basically explaining like everything the devs went through to basically get this to run, and super cool how they were able to do that. I always think it's really interesting when developers are able to put a game on a system or an older console or a less powerful console where it really should not run on it, but they definitely put in hella work, and the game runs pretty well. So definitely looking forward to checking out Resident Evil 2 on N64. Not a super expensive game, but definitely is one I'm looking forward to. Another one would be the original Super Smash Bros. I've actually played Smash 64 on an emulator before, and I think the graphics on it are really cool. I love the old school kind of low polygon style. I think it's really nostalgic, even though I don't have a ton of nostalgia for it. It just feels like super relaxing. I know that sounds super weird, but like the low polygon aesthetic is like super calming, and I don't know, I just like the way it looks. So Smash 64 will be cool to have physically, and I'll probably get the Japanese copy just because it's a little cheaper than buying the US one. Another game I'm wanting to pick up would be Donkey Kong 64. I know that one's obviously one of the bangers on N64. I know a lot of people kind of complain and say that it's like a collect-a-thon, but I definitely want to try it out. I'll have to get the expansion pack for it. That's one of the few games that actually requires the expansion pack on N64, so you need that additional RAM to play it. But I think Donkey Kong 64 will be sick. Mario Tennis is another one I'm interested in. I think the Mario Tennis games are always just plain, sit back and chill fun. It's not really something you have to think too hard about. And once again, I think Mario Tennis with that low polygon aesthetic is going to be pretty cool. This is a no-brainer, obviously, but Mario 64, I've only played Mario 64 on DS, and that was a game I grew up playing a ton. So I think playing it, how it was meant to be played and how it originally released will be a really cool experience. I feel like Mario 64 is one of those games where it's like, if you haven't played this, like, what are you doing, right? Like, it's like a classic movie or a classic album or something. It's like, you got to go back and check it out and play it. Doesn't matter what era you're from, you'll probably enjoy it, or at least respect the history behind it. And then another game I'm interested in is a Capcom game, and that is Mega Man 64. I love my Capcom games. I'm a huge Mega Man fan, so I think Mega Man 64 will be a fun one. I think this one is a bit pricier, but that's cool with me. If I can eventually find it for a good deal, I'll pull the trigger and play it. Other than like the obvious first-party Nintendo titles and some of the more popular third-party games, let me know if there's any games that you recommend that you think are like underrated or maybe even like hidden gems, since I don't know a ton about the library. So definitely hit me with some recommendations if there's anything that you think is fun or a must play or maybe kind of like flew under the radar. Since I don't have a CRT, I actually ordered a HDMI adapter for the N64. I don't expect it to look great by any means on my TV, but it's a way to at least get it hooked up and a way for me to play it right off the bat. So that should be here within the next day or so. Shout out to Amazon with their 1 or 2 day shipping. So definitely excited to get that HDMI adapter. And then another accessory that I bought, I feel like this is a must-have. That would be a cart adapter. So basically what this is going to do, I actually have to physically take the console apart for this. It's not some crazy strenuous process. It's super quick, but I'm going to be basically modding the system so it can play Japanese games along with American games. It doesn't work for PAL region games, but oh well. Luckily, I'll be able to play some Japanese N64 games that are one, usually cheaper, and two, maybe a little more obscure. But yeah, I think that'll be really nice to play some Japanese games on this system. So if I ever go to Japan again or want to order some games for the cheap, I can. So I'll probably get Mario 64 in Japanese. I'll probably get Smash Bros in Japanese, and just because they're super cheap. So I did pick up a couple games already for the system. I'm waiting for the Japanese card adapter to get here in the meantime, but I did already order a couple Japanese games. So first up would be Diddy Kong Racing. Not in amazing condition by any means, but this ended up being, I think it was like $5 because I ended up bundling this with another game that I'll show here in a sec. But Diddy Kong Racing, man, you really can't go wrong with Diddy Kong Racing. I had this on the DS back when I was a kid and really enjoyed it. So I'm really looking forward to playing the original one on actual Nintendo 64 hardware. I know this is a classic, and I know a lot of people actually prefer this over Mario Kart 64. So a lot of people consider this one of the best kart racers of all time. I think it's a really fun one, and Rare seemed to have just absolutely murdered it this generation for Nintendo with banger after banger. So Diddy Kong Racing, got this for, it was like $5. I mean, if you include like shipping and taxes, this was probably closer to like 7 or 8, but yeah, super cheap and definitely worth it. Next up here is a game that I've actually never played, not even on an emulator or anything. And I've wanted to play this for a long time. One, because I'm a huge Kirby fan, and two, because I think the graphics look amazing. So that's gonna be Kirby and the Crystal Shards, or Kirby 64. So this is a super fun looking game, and it's basically like 2.5D, right? So Kirby and all the enemies and levels and stuff are basically in 3D, but it's still side scrolling. So it's kind of like old school Kirby fun, but with a unique, N64 3D spin on it. So I know a lot of people might think Nintendo 64 stuff is just kind of ugly and outdated, but like I said, I think that old school kind of early 3D style of game I think is really cool and unique. And this is a game I've never played, so I definitely think this will be fun. This was also a Japanese copy that was in the bundle with Diddy Kong Racing. The seller was super tight and hooked it up, man, hooked it up. He was down to negotiate. These aren't in amazing condition, like they're a little beat up, and that's part of the reason why they were so cheap. But hey man, at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure they work. I'll test them out once I get the adapter, and yeah, looking forward to playing this. Hopefully I can beat Kirby in like a day or two. Definitely excited to get through this, man, especially since I just beat the Forgotten Land. Kind of been on a Kirby kick. And Kirby's probably my favorite Nintendo character of all time. So really, really excited to play that one, man. So the fact that I was able to get, both these games for fairly cheap, can't really complain, man. These are both great titles, but I'm open to pretty much any genre. So if there's something you want to recommend on N64, super down to try it out. The N64 was never a console that I really ever thought I was going to buy, but it just kind of worked out that way. Like I said, I was leaving that GameStop. The main reason I think why I got it is I'm really interested in going back to kind of that first 3D era from Nintendo and basically seeing what I missed out on. Like I said, I've explored some of the library, like some of the main games, like Mario Kart 64, for example, on an emulator, but it's not the same. Definitely wanted to play these on some real hardware. Definitely wanted to play some of these, legendary games on real hardware, and basically see what I missed out on. It's an era and console that I did not grow up with. The GameCube and GBA were my first Nintendo consoles that I have a ton of great memories with. So I think this will be a fun one to check out. So once I get that adapter in, that HDMI adapter and that cart adapter, I'll get those all set up and I'll start grinding away on some Nintendo 64 games. But yeah, that'll pretty much do it for today's video. As usual, appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you soon with another video.